Hi there, I'm Ash. I manage the small scale digital radio multiplex in Portsmouth and in Glasgow.
Hello, and I'm David Duffy, and I manage the small-scale DAB multiplex in Manchester. And Ash and I are going to share with you some of our learnings about small-scale DAB, and we're going to hopefully do it in an interesting way. So let's start with you, Ash. Let me ask you a question. What is small-scale DAB, or is it DAB?
That's a very good question. When it comes to DAB or DAB, I think we use the terms interchangeably, don't we? What we have in the UK is a tier of digital radio, national DAB multiplexes that started in the late 1990s. There two of those started in the late 90s, and then we were joined by a third national multiplex 5 years ago. There's also regional small scale multiplexes, and they generally covered counties or multiple cities and towns. And then the small scale DAB trial brought digital radio to much smaller areas, typically individual towns or cities. So I've got a question for you, David, right? When did this trial begin?
The small-scale DAB trial in the United Kingdom began in late summer of 2015. It was the brainchild of the DCMS, and it was scheduled to last 9 months. It is so successful, it is still running 5 years to the day. So, and it has been hugely successful. Now, you and I both run some of these trials, but how many trial areas are there in total? And for some extra bonus points, can you name them from memory?
Well, I'll tell you that's a tricky one. Well, the easy part of the answer is there's 10 trials, but the tricky part is trying to remember them all. So let's go through in no particular order. There's Aldershot, Bristol, Birmingham, Brighton, Cambridge, London. There is your one, Manchester.
Good.
Portsmouth, Glasgow, and there's one other one I can't think of.
Birmingham. You didn't say Birmingham.
Birmingham, of course. Very special, Birmingham. Yes, there we go.
I'm going to have to only give you half a point for that. Come on then, give me a tough question.
Okay, so here's one then. So, like you say, the trial's been going on now for 5 years, and there's different technical arrangements of these trials. So, can you name the types of how many technical trials are there, and can you name the different types?
Well, there are 10 trials. They're divided into single transmitter sites. So there are 7 of those, nice and simple. But 3 of the sites, or 3 of the small scale DAB trials are split into 2 sites each. One uses an on-channel repeater, so an over-the-air signal is picked up by the second transmitter. That's relatively simple. The other 2, that was Cambridge, by the way. The other 2, London and Glasgow, connect both of the transmission sites using the internet, and the signal is synchronized using GPS. So we tried out all 3 topologies in the small-scale DAB trial. But the trials have been successful, haven't they, in terms of not just DAB, but DAB+. But can you name, for 1 point, which small-scale DAB multiplex in the trials was the first to be all DAB+?
I'll try and redeem myself with this one. I mean, the very first small-scale multiplex to have a DAB+ service was my one in Portsmouth, and the first one to have all DAB+ services was your one in Manchester. So well done for pipping me to the post on that one.
No worries.
Obviously going from DAB to DAB+ has meant that, between us, we've been able to broadcast more stations on our multiplexes. So what kind of stations are we broadcasting on small scale DAB?
Using DAB Plus has meant we can fit more stations on, and that's also one of the big successes of small scale DAB is the sheer variety. So we've got community and commercial broadcasters, analog broadcasters who are now simulcasting on a digital platform, which is fabulous. But also lots of new formats have come out of the woodwork, specialist formats, music specialists like rock and soul. We've also got genre specific 80s and 90s stations, lots of religious stations, Christian, Muslim, and a plethora of speech stations, rolling news, rolling weather. And we've even got podcast radio as a platform. Who would have thought podcasting going onto a broadcast platform? It's superb. And of course, as we near Christmas, pop-ups are going to be the thing. And I think you've already launched a pop-up, haven't you, in Portsmouth?
That's right. Yeah, 1st of October, Christmas radio.
Fantastic. So the costs must have fallen, if you think about it, for all of these services to step forward. What can here in the UK, what typically is the price point for a service to be carried on a small scale DAB multiplex?
Yeah, that's right, David. The costs have fallen, and low. Getting tongue-tied here. Small-scale DAB has led to low-cost DAB because for a typical broadcaster to be on a multiplex, they're only going to be spending a few £100 a month. I mean, when you compare that to broadcasting on other platforms, a few £100 a month, it's really accessible for, all kinds of broadcasters. Like you say, not only the larger ones, but also the community broadcasters. But what about the cost of setting up a multiplex, David? Doesn't that cost a lot?
Well, times have passed. I mean, we've come some 30 years in the United Kingdom to using DAB, and technology has come a long way, and it's reduced in price. So multiplexes are now much easier to set up. They're lower cost, and those costs, as you've said, are being passed on to new service providers. But the best comparison that I use is comparing analog to digital. So typically, you would spend a certain amount of money building an analog infrastructure. Whether it's AM or FM, there's only one service on that infrastructure. If you spend the same amount of money on a DAB platform, a small-scale DAB platform, then you can fit 20, 25, 30 stations in the same space and for the same cost. So that's a real big win, and it's a win that's being passed on to service providers, and in turn, listeners benefit from that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, time to look to the future.
What's the future for small-scale DAB? We've talked about the last 5 years. What's it going to look like in 5 years' time?
Well, the really exciting thing is the future is here now today, because after 5 years, Ofcom, the regulator here, have started advertising the first 25 areas, 25 polygons, as they're called. And that's just the beginning. Over the next 5 years, they're going to advertise 228 small-scale DAB licenses. So the future begins today. So that's what I find really, really exciting. What about yourself?
Do you know what? I'm totally with you on that one. And I'll tell you what, I think, you're absolutely right. We're going to see over 200 of these plexes in the UK in the next 5 years. And I think, here's one for you, in 5 years' time in the UK, we will have 2,000 new stations on digital radio around the country. I think that is phenomenal.
What a great message to end on. So from Ash and myself, take care.